Rodeo on the shelf.
Derek, I spoke to John this morning.
Oh, okay.
Can you see if he's ready, Derek?
Yeah, I think we're ready. We good to go?
New guy. We're good? Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call to order our local planning agency meeting today. Like, roll call, please.
Chairman Maturo.
Here.
Vice Chairman Lowen.
Here.
Member Cola Pietro.
Here.
Member Bornstein. Member Doogie.
Here.
Member Lombardo. Member Morlock.
I'd like to point out, Mr. Morlock will no longer be a member of the board. He resigned due to personal reasons.
Travel.
We're going,
Travel conflicts.
travel conflict? Okay, thank you. That would fall under personal reasons, Derek. Thank you so much for that. Let's do stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to do something out of order because we have a gentleman here that would like to speak. So, would you like to speak before or after the presentation? After? Okay. So, Mike, I'm going to let you take over, and we're going to do Chapter 7, Article 2, Dock and Shoreline Structures now.
Okay, we'll turn that over then for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Laura Gibson, environmental specialist with community development, and I have a brief presentation on the dock code changes. I'm gonna do this.
A little back, forward, back, and then that's a little pointer.
Okay, the Dock and Shoreline Structures Code was originally adopted as part of the city's transition land development code in 2000 from Lee County, and minor amendments were made in 2014 by the city, and more extensively in 2021. So we've identified some changes needed based on recent permit requests post-Hurricane Ian and input from dock contractors in the area. And the changes seek to protect ingress and egress for property owners with shorelines that may be used for boating. You can see this is an example of one of the shorelines, kind of tight areas that we have for boating. So currently, I don't know, hopefully you can see this. We have in artificial water bodies, we have a 10-foot boat slip setback, except for at the end of the canal. So we use, you can see better on the smaller picture on the left, we use a 25% area extending from the property lines on the top and bottom. This is our proposed change. Currently, we go straight out from a property line to the center of a canal or the center of the channel direction. This is our proposal to further limit dock structures and mooring areas to this angled area, riparian area here, to allow for better ingress and egress from the side properties for each property for boat structures. And then Nothing else changes really. We're still limiting structures and mooring areas to 25% of the waterway. We feel like this change will provide additional space to maneuver boats in and out of the mooring areas than if docks and mooring areas are completely to the side property line. And we feel it works better than a side setback with the variety of shoreline lengths that we have in Bonita. We also have some minor changes based on implementation of the previous changes that we made in 2021, such as more flexibility for requiring the benthic habitat species survey assessments when we're expected to find those resources, and providing additional flexibility for retaining wall placement to reduce erosion between the retaining wall and the waterway, which aligns with agency requirements, and temporary storage of dredge material on residential property before it's ultimately hauled away. So I'm happy to take any questions.
I have one. Just on figure 7.13, where it's shall is changed to may be required. If the benefit resources are expected to be found, who determines that?
Staff will determine that possibly in conjunction with other agency staff, such as the Estero Bay Aquatic Preserve.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You got anything?
I want to hear what this guy has to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
For the record, my name is John Seekman. I'm here with Stokes Marine. We're a local marine contractor. Been in business for about 20 years. And I'd like to start by thanking staff for reaching out to the industry for our input on this topic. We were reached out to several months ago regarding this topic. And for the minor changes that were proposed, we are in support of them for the flexibility on the benthic surveys, on the retaining walls and the dredging. That all looks great, and it'll help us through those processes when we get to them. The one item regarding the proposed repairing line changes, that is one item that we are in disagreement on. We don't support the proposed change to angling the repairing lines to 45 degrees. We understand it's an attempt to for a betterment to the code to protect the ingress-egress pathways of abutting property owners as they drive their boats in and out of their slips. And what we've seen with that is it's very hard to try and codify the protection of ingress-egress pathways. There's just too many variables at stake. It's the length of the boat, the width of the boat, the water depth, how many engines does it have a joystick controller? What's the capability of the captain? Is this his first boat and the first time he's ever used it, or is he an experienced boater that's been here his whole life? Width of the property, wind direction, water current, a whole bunch of factors come into play for ingress-egress pathways for a boat slip. With the repairing lines, the way they used to be when they were perpendicular to the shoreline, there was a 10-foot setback for boats, but the dock structure, I believe, could go inside that 10. The 10-foot applied to the actual boat slip. In the past, with code changes, we've gone through this with other municipalities, and setbacks is something that's been tried by everybody, and they're all different. Cape Coral's 12-foot setback from the repairing line. Fort Myers Beach is 5, Lee County is 0, City of Fort Myers Center 1/3, Sanibel's 15. Everybody's tried something different to protect the ingress-egress pathways, and they've all had the same issue. There's problems where you'll go to build a dock that's permitted and approved, and the neighboring property will have an issue with it. They think that their ingress-egress pathway is being affected. And what we found is that the best case scenario to design a dock to best protect somebody is having 0 setbacks. That would be what we'd propose, is to have no setbacks rather than changing repairing lines or 5, 10, 15, 12. Just eliminate setbacks. What that does, when we go to design a dock, it allows us to shift everything over to one side, and then that allows the greatest area within their repairing lines to get the boat in and out of the slips. When you have setbacks on either side or angled repairing lines, it forces us to come in towards the center of the property, and as it gets moved into the center, that ingress-egress pathway gets pushed over to the other side of the property, and now you're getting pushed into the neighbor's property. So when it comes to designs, we like to have no setbacks. It gives us the greatest canvas to design a dock that allows the protection or the ingress egress pathway of the homeowner, and it allows, you know, a design that would prevent a neighbor from ever blocking them. Because if we're forced into the center, sometimes that forces them to cross over the neighbor's pathway, and that's why if we can shift it to one side or another, it would be the best. So we just like the consideration of the LPA to consider the impact of these riparian lines. Part of it, and I don't know how it applies on the legal aspect, but we kind of view it as a take of riparian rights. They were allowed to do this before, and by angling it, you're taking away that riparian area that they're allowed to have. So we just like that mindset and thought to be considered.
You sound very well informed. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I got a question for you. Seeing how you're in the business, a lot of our lots here off of Hickory, a lot of those seawalls and lot lines are only 50 feet. And having had property over there and had a boat over there at one time, I just want your professional opinion of how much on a 50-foot lot, that a dock, that could make a big difference as far as getting in and out, correct?
Yes, and typically the smaller the lot, the width of the lot, the more important having no setbacks comes into play. Because if you're at 50 feet and you put angled riparian lines or setbacks into play, like I had mentioned, it forces you towards the center, and that forces your ingress-egress pathway to be pushed over to the neighbor on the other side. So when you have zero, it allows us to push everything over to one side and give you the best design possible for your property to not be impacted by a future structure on somebody else's property. That's something we always try and keep in mind when we're designing a dock is, will this work for you and your property? And if a neighbor ever builds to their greatest extent possible, how is that going to affect you? Sometimes people have an appetite to take a risk. Sometimes people have a dock structure that was built way back in the day and they were one of the first ones on the canal or one of the first properties. Their neighbor was their best friend or their family member, or they owned both properties, and they said, we'll deal with it down the road. Fast forward to today, new owners, new property, and when a dock gets built, it can impact the neighbor's ingress-egress pathway. That's a case-by-case basis, but what we've seen is trying to codify something to protect that it just hasn't worked in the past, because we've gone through these changes with other municipalities. Fort Myers Beach in 18, Cape Coral twice, 18 and 21. Lee County, we just finished last year. That was a 2-year process. Worked with Bonita, I think it was in 21 for their change. So we've gone through this many times, and what we've seen is zero setbacks is the best case to try and protect everybody for their ingress-egress pathways.
Go ahead, Tom.
Have you brought up your concerns to the staff
Yes, when they
prior to this?
yes, regarding this we have. I basically typed this out in an email, and that had gone to staff back when they had reached out for our input.
And the staff's response was?
Well, we're gonna call John up. If you don't mind, John, would you please come on up and address the issue, please?
Thank
you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Just real quickly while he's doing that, I'll address the legal question. As you know from the screen, this is for artificial water bodies, and riparian rights do not apply the same way to artificial bodies as they do to natural water bodies.
And how do you distinguish the difference?
Well, a canal versus something that goes right into the bay or to the beach or a lake. A natural water body has common law and statutory riparian rights. An artificial water body has those rights which are granted through development regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
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 Where you stand on this depends on where you sit. If I was a dock builder, I'd want 0-foot setbacks as well, because I'd want to be able to build whatever I could sell to my client. The reason why we have proposed what we proposed is because after Ian, a lot of the docks, and I say a majority of the docks, were either damaged or destroyed. So we're seeing a lot of build back. The previous regulations that were put in place a couple of years ago were very effective for the situation we were facing then. What we are looking at now does not function as well. And while 0-foot setbacks and pushing a dock over to one side, in theory, may work from the podium, what we found is it doesn't work in practice, which is why we're proposing these. Because it doesn't have the dock over to one side, allowing as much access on the other as possible. What it is as much dock as can be built. And when there is a later issue, it's not, we've designed this in a way that our neighbors can have access. It's, we have a permit, so we're not changing. So by the time that you're facing this issue, it's too late. Someone has either already lost access or has been severely limited in their access to their own dock. So what we did when we started facing this situation was look at how a handful of communities were handling the same issue and look at how they would affect this particular community. Because our canals, our waterways are just a little bit different than everybody else's, just like everybody has unique conditions. And what we found was how Punta Gorda handles it was pretty similar to what we were looking to do. And it allowed us the greatest benefit with the least detriment is really what we were looking for. It provided additional clarity as opposed to what we have now. And it should also make sure that when we have a larger rebuild phase that we are in, it allows for the greatest access possible. So if we're looking at a 0-foot setback when the majority of docks are being replaced or repaired or altered or added to, it's just a recipe for problems. And if we get past this point and we're a couple of years down the road and most of these docks are built and we realize that because of the situation we've set up, we've got additional flexibility for some reason, we can come back and change it. Our goal is not to limit what someone can have to enjoy. Our job is to make sure that whatever they build isn't interfering with their neighbor. So if we're in a situation where we can allow for additional space or allow for additional dock area, I don't have a problem with it. But what we're looking at now, we need to make sure that on this larger scale of rebuilding that we're in, that we're not creating numerous issues, because the current code and the current regulations would allow for that if someone builds to the greatest extent possible. And what we're seeing is that was not always the case. Today, there are more situations where that is the case. So you're not looking at, and someone was talking about back when your neighbor was, your best friend or your relative, and it was no big deal, and you built a dock for your fishing boat, and that's all it was. The docks that are being built now tend to be much more extensive. They tend to be much larger. They tend to be for more than one vessel, and that's great. But it brings on a whole different challenge. So we're proposing what's in front of you to address that, to allow for people to have the greatest extent of a dock that they can have while not interfering with their neighbor. So I'm not going to say it's perfect, but the situation that we have now with the current regulations, it will create issues.
Existing docks, are they grandfathered in if they don't have to be renovated?
If you're not altering your dock, it stays. If you have a permit for your dock, there's no reason for you to come back in and make any changes to it unless you want to.
Yes, this question.
I'm going to ask what's probably going to sound like a stupid question, but it's logical of why we can't angle the dock.
There's nothing saying that the dock can't be angled. What we're looking at is, if you see the area, this is basically the buildable area. So if you want to angle it this way and have the dock angled like that, you can.
But
This
then you
basically-
wouldn't need the 45-degree angle at the end. You could use the whole space and just have one end of the dock come out into the canal a little further for access. Does that make any sense at all?
I can probably help address
Go ahead,
it
because I'm not
a
following.
little bit. There's two issues that you're playing with, and I don't know if staff has can pull up a diagram either from the city of Punta Gorda's designs, which we looked at for this, or if they have one themselves, but you have to maintain navigability in the center of the canal. So part of the reason a lot of these linear docks are constructed is because if the canal is not of sufficient width, an angled dock may interfere with the main channel.
What is the footage on that?
I don't know what this one is, but what I would say is the main reason for the 45-degree angled setback is not primarily for the situations that you see here, where there are single lots along the way. The 45-degree angle works exceptionally well in artificial water bodies because of end lots, corner lots, when you start to look at the geometry of an end lot or a corner lot, and what happens if they were able to build to the ends, they absolutely do block their neighbors, and there's a lot of litigation.
Well, in the code, the corner lots have a separate, in the permitting stage now, an end lot has different standards than the middle lots, correct?
Correct, but part of the change we're looking to do is to try to make these things all match up a little.
Correct.
Anyone else have any questions?
I just, some of the canals that we have here in Bonita are extremely narrow.
A lot of them.
And, I mean, you know, there's barely passage. If you could move if you had thrusters on a small boat, it would be difficult to get them in and out. And I just question whether or not that's gonna. Okay, I guess my question is, if, let's say that the property owner had a dock that was within the original design, and it got destroyed, can he put that dock back the way it was? It was an existing structure. Does he have to follow the new plan, or can he go back where he was?
And he had a permit for that.
Yes.
They can, yeah, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't somebody at the state that was gonna say no, but yes.
So not only are existing, but renovated with original permit are grandfathered.
No.
The way we have the code now as adopted in 2021, if there was more than 50% repairs needed to the dock, then they must come up to the current code standards.
That's different.
That's the standard non-conforming code throughout the city.
Yeah.
That's how you slowly eke change to reverse grandfather status is, you know, if there's a damage beyond 50% of the value, that's when it triggers.
No other questions? Thank you very much.
And just real quick before you finish deliberation, we don't have a problem with changing this code. If conditions change, we see weaknesses, there's something that needs to be altered. I mean, this thing was just rewritten a couple of years ago, and we're back here today. So if conditions change and we feel that there's a need to change this code, we're happy to bring it back. So what we're looking at now is our best estimate on what we need for today. And if what we need tomorrow is different, we'll come back with the changes I think we need then.
Unfortunately, you're gonna have a lot of docks that are going to fall under this new code,
Yes,
that
we
in
are.
a couple of years, you're not gonna wanna come back and say, oops, we made a mistake, and
It's
have
not gonna
those
be-
people have to spend money to fix it. I think that maybe leaving it the way it was as time went on, kind of if it's really totally not broken, don't fix
Yeah,
it. I don't know.
I
Just
don't
a
want to be
question.
misunderstood. I'm not saying this is a mistake. The reason why we're proposing it is because we're very serious that this is what we think that we need. If,
But 2 years ago, it was okay the way it is now. Okay, that's just my question. I'm not being a smart aleck. I'm just asking a question.
I'm gonna suggest something that I've never suggested since I've been on this board, which has been quite a long time. Don, I don't know how you feel, or Bob, would you guys like more time to digest this? Table this today for the first time ever? Digest everything you've heard, or do you
I
have
would.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kinda get that feeling. So I'm gonna make a motion to table this until the next meeting, and we'll revisit it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 So we'll make a ruling on this at the next meeting.
And I think honestly that, you know, I hope this didn't fall through the cracks, but it'd be nice to have more people here, other than a dock builder, all due respect. More people that it's going to affect, have some feedback into this, rather than us saying, okay, we're gonna take a good chunk of your dock away, and if you don't like it, too bad. I think maybe if, I don't know how we
At
would,
that point, I don't want to be sitting here.
right.
Well, without security.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if we need more feedback from people that live on canals. I mean, I personally would feel more comfortable knowing how they felt, and having personally been involved in that before, on a small man-made canal down off of Hickory. And there was some big boats in there, and one was built at the very end by Bay Road, at the very end of Seagrape, and they had angled that dock so that they didn't have any problems with mine. And that's one of those canals that you were talking about that, you know, if you don't know how to run a boat, you're hitting somebody. And the corner lot had had 3 or 4 docks. One went out on the bay and 2 came down the side. But nobody ever yelled at anybody, and we never had any problems getting in and out. But you just had to use your head, if you know. And I'm not sure that changing a whole code for every dock in town is where I sit. It makes sense.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're gonna go on to Chapter 4, Section 4, Backyard Hens, which is a favorite of some of us. Come on down, Backyard Hens. Thank you, John and staff, for your presentation.
Thank you guys for the time today. Sean Gibbons, Community Development for the record. What you guys have in front of you is simply a minor change, slight rewrite to our backyard hen program. The program originally began in 2012 as a pilot program, was then codified by council in 2015 and 2017 to the current program you see in front of you. Essentially, staff was requested by council to redraft the ordinance to provide for a no cap for our total maximum number of permits for the city. Traditionally, the program only had a cap of 25 permits, so 25 households, single family or duplex only, were allowed to have the hens. Up to 4 hens, coop up to 12 square feet, certain setbacks as required by the district and as required by the ordinance. Council has requested staff to lift that cap, so it would be an unlimited number at this point. There would be no cap on that. The regular rules would still apply, and what you're seeing is a minor change in the ordinance to provide for what council has requested. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
One comment.
Yes, sir.
You're like the FedEx speaker
I'm sorry, too fast. It's okay.
I've ever heard. And I'd like to recognize the mayor. Let's give it up for the mayor, everybody. Welcome. Good to have you here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does
Yes,
anybody
sir.
have any questions
Yeah.
or know what he said?
Let's look at page 1. Under C, permit requirements,
Yes, sir.
number 4.
Yes.
Is that ever enforced?
Yes.
Or have they taught hens how to crow?
I mean, so if it is an unpermitted hen coop, which there are several in the city that code enforcement has to address and deal with, oftentimes you'll see roosters there. If it is a permitted program through us, then no, there would be no roosters that would be allowed. Yeah, that's why, again, the crowing is the issue, and they can tend to be a bit aggressive
have
as
them.
well.
I mean, I don't, it's not like it wakes me up in
Yeah.
the morning, but at 5 o'clock, they're up.
They're out and about. Yeah.
John's going to give you his phone number. If call him in the morning, and he personally comes out.
Definitely, yeah. But if that is an issue, I would absolutely encourage you to call code. They can definitely take action on that. And if someone were to be part of the program and have a rooster, it's a violation of that. We revoke the permit and they're out SOL for a year. They don't get any other option to get
I'm sure there are people that live closer than I do, so if nobody.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Now, again, if you're in an ag area, for example, it's a bit different.
Yes.
Right? That's a different scenario. This is for, again, conventionally zoned properties, traditional single-family homes or
Okay.
duplexes. Yes, sir.
That answers that.
How strictly are they enforced, these regulations? I have seen hens walk in the parking lot at Walgreens on Bonita Beach Road.
So again, in terms of permitted hens, so the coops that we allow on permit, we regulate those pretty heavily. Code is very involved with it, so is our department. For unregulated situations where in which individuals have physically went out and purchased hens, gotten a coop illegally and set it up, or have not fenced them, pinned them, or contained them, that then becomes another code enforcement issue and problem. So that's one of the things we do kind of like about the program, is at least it gives us the ability to provide for an approval and inspection and kind of tag the properties that are supposed to have this program, that are allowed to utilize it, versus the individual neighbor that decided to do it kind of randomly or offhand. They're not allowed to, they don't have a permit. It gives code a method as well as us to kind of track who's in the right and who's done it illegally, essentially.
I don't think they're doing their rounds that often, but,
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Just how many permits are there now?
Currently, there are 25 that are allowed, and it was capped at 25. Again, we have a waiting list, so eventually, if you want to get on it, I put you in the waiting list. When one goes away, I can call you up or contact those individuals. I call it my
That was
hen
my
list.
next question, if there's
Yeah.
a waiting list.
Yes, sir. Yeah, correct. Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Since there is a waiting list, do you contact those people and say, do you still have chickens?
For the waiting, well, the waiting list would be them that we're on the list itself, but the individuals that have them, yes, we do random check-ins, and anytime a property is sold, for example, correct? So that way you lose that permit. So the permit does not stick with the property, it sticks with the owner. And as the program existed previously, but won't further if we do these changes, you'd be put on the expedited list to get that permit transferred to your new home if it was applicable, if you had them previously. But essentially, the idea would be, again, it's just that list. You have it. You're on the waiting list. When one comes available, you're contacted. It's a pretty straightforward process. It's been successful, but that waiting list has grown over time, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed. We saw a few properties relinquish them after the different hurricanes we've had. Occasionally, you'll see families where the kid had a 4-H project, for example, or it was the kind of the kids thing, and they went off to college. I'll get permits back from families sometimes in that circumstance, but most individuals that utilize it tend to enjoy it. They tend to keep the program. I think we've had maybe a total of maybe 12 homes over the long time we've had the program in place that have actually just simply stopped utilizing it and not relinquished it through a different methodology or means.
So the permit stays with the owner
But the permit stays with the owner at that specific
at
property.
that specific.
Correct, yeah, and then
So if they move to another property, they don't have that automatic.
correct, yeah, we will expedite them. So for example, if you had it on your existing home and you moved to a new address that was appropriate to have them, I would say, okay, I'll put you at the front of the line because you're a previous permit holder. That's the way the draft of the ordinance is structured. You would get priority status for approval when one becomes available. If we do it the way we do it now, that would no longer be applicable because there would be the opportunity to transfer that wherever you needed to go to, essentially. Yes, sir.
How did the 25 arbitrary number, how was that arrived at?
It was a pilot program. We were actually the very first in the area to do it. And since then, Lee County, Collier, some of the municipalities have also adopted a program similar to ours. Most of them have a higher cap than we have now, but which is sort of what it was at the time. It was kind of a way to say, okay, we're going to test the waters, see how it goes. So 25 seemed like a safe number. It was kind of manageable and containable if it kind of went off the rails on us. But up to this point in time, less illegal permitting, individuals that have not done what they're supposed to do or individuals that have not complied with the ordinance itself. We've had pretty good success with the program.
Is there any talk, because there's a wait list, to change the 25?
Yes, yeah, I think that was one of the major drivers for this. That was kind of the concern was, hey, we have individuals that really want to be on the program, want to be able to enjoy the benefits of it, have the opportunity to do it, but again, they've been waiting months, in some cases up to a year, depending on the volume we get back and work between our permittees that are relinquished.
At the price of eggs now, I'm surprised that list has not been expanded.
It's pretty substantial, the list has gotten to. And again, people will eventually, sometimes unfortunately they will lose hope and be like, hey, we're not really interested in doing it anymore. Thank you so much. It's just been too long. We've moved on. Or individuals will kind of wait very patiently and bless them for doing it. Again, they're all really, really good, decent, patient people with about it. And we can get to when we get to them. But yeah, it's become a bit of a list. And I think that was kind of the catalyst, I think, reaching out to council members about the concerns with, hey, do we have the ability to expand this list, to remove the cap, to raise the cap? And I think the direction council seemed to be enthusiastic for was removing the cap altogether. And again, just to kind of reiterate, this would be for conventionally zoned properties, so not any PDs, RPDs, CPDs, things along those lines. It would not be for, like, your gated communities, for example. This is going to be conventionally zoned properties that are single-family and duplex only, and they have to confide with the entire list of the ordinance regulations. So again, your setbacks, your number of hen cap, the whole shebang would apply. So it's relatively well regulated in that sense in terms of the structuring of the ordinance.
And what we're doing today, if you look at 4152A,
Yes.
is they took the language out of there that's limiting permitting, and it's basically open now to anybody that.
Yeah, well, so there'd be no cap on it. So again, suppose dropping off at 25, if you apply and you meet the criteria, again, conventionally zoned, single family or duplex, so like mobile homes wouldn't count, those kind of things would not count. It'd be traditional single family homes, conventional single family homes, or duplexes, and you can produce a site plan that meets the criteria, so as far as setbacks from your regular accessory structures, as well as a 20-foot setback from any adjacent residential dwelling unit or residential use, so like an accessory dwelling unit, for example. As long as you can meet those criteria, we can give you a letter of determination saying, listen, you're welcome to participate in the program, at which point, once they say, hey, we have the hens, the coop's in place, we do an inspection to make sure everything is kosher. If it's not, we pull the permit. If it is,
Kosher
Godspeed.
eggs?
They do. Well, I'm pro-chicken, so thank you.
Thank you, guys, I appreciate
Wait
it.
a minute, one last question.
Yes, sir.
In HOA developments,
Yes.
closed gates,
Yes.
that's up to them. City doesn't come into that.
So again, an HOA can always be more restrictive than us, just not less. So can an HOA. So if you have like a non-gated HOA, for example, and you say, hey, we don't want them, you guys can override that. Similar to a lot of our permits, one of those things where, hey, I can tell you it's okay, but if your HOA says no, that's the end-all, be-all. So yes, again, they can be much more restrictive if they wish to. Yes, sir.
Thank you go ahead.
Yes,
One
sir.
question, you said that the priority status.
Yes.
And under D number 3, that's crossed out of this.
Correct, yes, sir, yeah, because if we were allowing an unlimited number of permits, I wouldn't have to take the previous owner and bump it to the top of the list kind of a thing. That was not the intent of what we were doing, but that whole section is no longer applicable if we go forward. Yes, sir.
And one other thing, have there been any complaint, I mean, I don't know, do you know if there's been complaints about people that have them, even though they're permitted?
We've actually gotten very few for the permittees. We will get a lot for individuals that are illegally, and the general answer is, hey, go get a permit. Well, if you don't have a permit to offer them, then it should get rid of the hens, or they'll go away for a while and come back, and the problem tends to persist. Similar to the rooster question, it's individuals who aren't part of the program, and really we don't know that they're there until we know that they're there, tend to be the issue most often. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great chicken presentation.
Thank you, thank you.
Do we want to make a motion now then for that? Let's go ahead and make a motion to approve, let's see, Chapter 4, Section 4-1052, Backyard Hens.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Favor, aye.
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 Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to Chapter 7, Article 2, Sea Turtles.
Morning again, Laura Gibson again, and here to present on changes to the city's sea turtle ordinance. So all sandy beaches in the state host our sea turtles for nesting here. This diagram is an example. Everything in yellow, red, and orange are sandy beaches where sea turtles use for nesting. And the state of Florida delegates the authority of protecting sea turtles to the local municipalities and counties. So they've created model ordinances for sea turtle lighting and many other types of things for cities and counties to utilize and adapt to their municipalities for implementation of rules like this. So we had adopted a sea turtle article from Lee County in 2001, and the state model ordinance for sea turtles was updated in December of 2020. So why do we need to have these regulations? So all sea turtles throughout the world are listed as either endangered or threatened by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the ones that visit Florida beaches also are protected and listed with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. They have a variety of threats, and the beach-related ones where we implement these regulations are the threats include increased beach development, limiting nesting sites, and disturbance by artificial lighting. Our most common visitors here on our beach are loggerheads, which this turtle is here, a loggerhead sea turtle laying a nest. And we also occasionally have green sea turtles too. And the adult and hatchling sea turtles use the relatively darker dune system, which screens out the celestial light, and the relatively brighter ocean, which reflects celestial light to help navigate from the beach to the ocean. So heavily lit beaches can deter adult females from nesting and cause them to abandon their nesting attempt, as well as become disoriented from the water where they need to go back, as well as the hatchlings. And sea turtles have a very low survivability. Only about 1 in 1,000 turtles that hatch from eggs actually make it to adulthood, and then they can't start reproducing until they're 20 to 35 years old. So it really takes a long time to get another population going. So we are suggesting a complete repeal and replace of the ordinance and the updated model ordinance requires the use of the most current lighting technology for exterior lighting that minimizes the negative effects of artificial lighting on nesting and hatchling sea turtles by keeping lighting low, long, and shielded. Those are terms that we use to try to describe what we are looking for in a typical situation on, for lighting visible on the beach. So low as in low to the ground, like these bollards. Long as in long wavelength lighting that are in the upper nanometers of light, such as amber, orange, and red. And then shielded lights, like here, that are completely encasing the point source of light and putting the lighting where it's needed for visibility and not where it can be seen from the beach and from nesting habitat. The language also provides more specificity on how to bring existing lighting into compliance than the current language provides, and the model ordinance and draft language retain the 45% window and glass tint requirements. The updated language also protects sea turtles in their nesting habitat with requirements for beach equipment, irrigation, and protection of the beach habitat. Adult sea turtles cannot move backwards, so it's very important that beach equipment be stored in the proper location so they cannot become trapped by the equipment. And I think that is all I have. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yes. Existing buildings, high-rise, et cetera, that are on the beaches, and there are a significant number of them. You're gonna have to put in new film on all of the windows, light absorbing or light reflecting back with film, and have to modify a number of the lights that are there now. Having come from a healthcare organization that was mandated by state government to do so many things, yet not paying for it, it irked me. And this could be an extremely expensive endeavor for existing buildings, etc. Is there any thought about grandfathering the original ones in?
That is provided for in section 7-50, existing exterior and interior lighting. They must conform to the criteria, which is similar to what we already require. And then if they were to redevelop, replace glass, then that would need to be updated to the new construction
But
standard.
if they got a permit and were existing, they could remain at that.
If you said if they got a permit or what?
They
I'm sorry.
originally were permitted to build
Yes.
whatever the structure was, and they didn't have a need to change that, the windows or anything like that. They could remain as is.
If the structural parts are not changed and they can conform to the requirements, the criteria under the existing lighting, which is similar to what we require now, then they would not have to update to the full new construction standards. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right, let's make I'll make a motion to approve Chapter 7, Article 2, Sea Turtles.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Let's do an update from April, from our meeting.
So for the record, Jacqueline Genson, the amendments that you heard at your last meeting were scheduled for City Council for adoption. They did approve them unanimously. So thank you for your review and input. So that's all we have on that. And the amendments were, if you recall, it was for downtown signage. It was for the ability to build single-family homes in mobile home districts, even if they were at the non-conforming setbacks, and then changes to our Bonita Beach Road corridor standards.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a general question.
But Bob's got a question.
Talking about chickens and sea turtles is fascinating and interesting. but I understand that we have not reviewed any of the major building projects that are occurring throughout the Bonita Springs area in probably a year. And right now in Bonita Springs, I think there are 7 major building projects happening, and none of them have been brought to this agency. Is there a reason for that, and will that modify in the future, or what?
Sure. So the local planning agency is charged with, when it comes to private petitions, your charge is to review any private requests by those entities for land use changes or changes to the comprehensive plan. So we have a couple of cases that are pending, but they haven't been deemed sufficient for them to go ahead and be scheduled. But those are when they involve land use changes, whether it be a future land use map amendment or a text amendment. So in those instances, we don't have any petitions that have been found sufficient. Other boards, so that we have a zoning board of adjustment and appeals, and their charge is to hear private land use petitions for rezonings. So it's a different board that has different responsibilities. So your charge is primarily with the land use changes for the comprehensive plan, for land use map and text changes, but also your charge is by statute to review land development code changes.
As I understand it, I may be wrong, and I've had this conversation with one of our commissioners, that there is some land use change on, say, of these 7 projects that are upcoming.
Yeah, if you would like to stay back, I'm happy for you to discuss those with me, and we can see if those are the case.
So if you recall, the last one that you would have seen was the London Bay project.
Right.
But that's because it had a comp plan amendment associated with.
Right.
Nothing.
If there is none, there's no amendment, there's no changes, we don't see them.
Correct.
Which is the majority of the buildings.
And this board would not see, other than just as backup information, wouldn't be involved in like the concept plans and the more detailed that would be addressed by the zoning board.
Well, let me give an example, one that is in the planning and probably will occur. The one that's off of Bonita Beach Road and 75. And I understand that will have a land use change to it, which will include the entrance to 75, which will change the actual use of the land to extend that entrance to 75.
So, yeah, I'm not certain. So we had a rezoning petition right at the northeast interchange at Bonita 75, but that was a rezoning petition. And then immediately to the east of that, we have another rezoning application that is in process. And as part of a rezoning
Is that Pulte's project?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't
It's a
believe that's
commercial
Pulte.
project.
Yeah, there's commercial in the front and then there's multifamily in the back. But from what I recall, it was not. Pulte Home is primarily a single family home builder. Pulte is actively pursuing permits, but it's more interior to the city, off of Paradise Road. So,
You guys can discuss that afterward if you
Yes,
want,
yes,
and we'll do it. Thank you, we really appreciate it, thank you so much. And, so thank you for the update. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for July 20th. We're still good on that, the board's good with that. Don won't be here, we know Don, we'll track you down, Don.
Give me a call.
I may not be. I'm supposed to have hip replaced, and I'm still waiting for a date, so I may not.
We'll come to the hospital, we don't care.
No, you won't.
But,
Because I don't want to be in the hospital.
It's day surgery now.
we're gonna have 3
No, it's not.
We need to have 4
I thought we had to have 4.
or for quorum.
As of now, we only have.
So we'll be talking.
Okay.
We might
But,
not be having that.
Mike, can we get, and I've had this discussion with you, can we get a more advanced notice? And can we get a more advanced notice of when the paraphernalia is ready?
Yep. So you're asking, because I provided it last week when it was made available pretty quickly. Yes, but we will provide it to you as soon as it is available.
Remember
That's-
the last month, there was a change and,
Right, there was a change of dates and right,
okay.
right.
Just keep it in mind.
Mike, I'd
Definitely.
like mine about 3 months early.
Will do.
All right, approval of the minutes. Let's make a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Got a second?
Second.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, thank you, everybody, including Bob, for your time. Meeting adjourned.